Hello and welcome back to the Librarian of the Rings. Today we're talking all about the newly announced Magic the Gathering The Hobbit set. Welcome back, my name is Ben, I'm the librarian. I know I've been gone for a while, I've had a lot going on and haven't been able to give this channel a lot of attention, but I did need to come back to talk about this new Magic the Gathering The Hobbit set because wow, I am so excited. This is some of the most exciting news that we've had. If you're both a fan of Tolkien and a fan of Magic the Gathering, this is very exciting. Now, I know that there was some controversy around the Magic the Gathering, the Lord of the Rings set, and I've addressed that controversy in other videos, but the truth is that set was so carefully crafted and such a good representation of the Lord of the Rings books that it makes me very excited for The Hobbit to be coming. Since getting into Magic with the Lord of the Rings, I've also been playing other Magic sets, and Magic is a lot of fun, and it's really one of the very best ways for this content to be adapted into a game. So let's talk about the announcement. Well, first, the announcement was teased on Bilbo's birthday. So on September 22nd, Wizards of the Coast put out a little teaser that was just kind of like, happy birthday, Bilbo, a little shot of the Shire going into Bilbo's door. And to make sure that people knew it was the Hobbit, they put the runes that Gandalf carves in the door onto the door. And they matched the runes that Tolkien said were there, not the rune that Gandalf does in the Peter Jackson's film. So great attention to detail. That's what the Wizards has shown throughout the process of adapting The Lord of the Rings. They've given great attention to detail. So everyone was kind of like, oh, does this mean the Hobbit's coming? Will it be a secret lair? Will it be a set? And at MagicCon yesterday, they announced the sets for the year except for one, and they announced the Hobbit as a set. So it's not a secret lair. It's not just going to be like a 6-card drop or something like that. It is going to be a full set. Now, how big that set will be, I don't know. The Lord of the Rings was a large set. We just got a Spider-Man Universes Beyond, just came out yesterday or something. I played through the pre-release on that, and it's a small set. And I would guess that The Hobbit will lean a little bit more towards the small set side of things. There is a lot in The Hobbit, but it also, of course, is much, much smaller than Lord of the Rings. So there's only so much that they can do with that unless they want to reach out into other areas depending on their rights. So let's talk about what we might see here, what might be there. Now with a smaller set, I don't know if we'll get commander decks, but I will talk about commander decks at the end because I would love to see them. I think there's some great opportunity here. One thing that I want to talk about is legendaries. In the Lord of the Rings, there were so many legendaries. The same in the Final Fantasy set, like so many legendaries. And that tends to be the case with Universes Beyond sets, is there's a lot more legendaries because there are all of these named characters that you want to incorporate in. And in the Lord of the Rings, they did almost everybody. I mean, there were very few people that didn't get something. I've talked about Gildor not getting a legendary card, but that Gilrain did get a legendary card, right? Like there's just like a lot of detail put into this. So I would expect virtually every named character to get at least one card in this Hobbit set. They kind of need that for the pull. So of course there are 13 named dwarves in the company, and I would expect each of those 13 dwarves to get at least one card. And then probably every other named character. I would expect the Saxville Bagginses to get a card, maybe a card that's together, maybe they each get a separate card, but really I think they're going to kind of dig there. I wouldn't even be surprised if Bull Roarer got a card or got incorporated in some way. That would be a great saga. Bull Roarer took, you could create like a token creature and you could also destroy an enemy. That would be awesome. So there's so many opportunities here, but yeah, I expect every named character in the book pretty much to get a card. I'm trying to think of anyone who wouldn't. Then I expect the main characters to get multiple cards. So I expect Bilbo to have multiple cards showing different stages of his journey. So kind of a Shire Bilbo, a Bilbo who's developing as he goes on his adventure, a Riddles in the Dark Bilbo, something like Bilbo Riddle Master or something. Bilbo gives himself a bunch of names in his conversation with Smaug, so I would expect to get some of those names on card. Bilbo Barrel Rider, Luckwearer, like all of these different names could be incorporated into different cards. Of course, they won't use every single one because that would be a ton of cards for Bilbo, but I expect multiple cards in multiple different color combinations to be there for Bilbo. I also expect this for Thorin. I think there's no way you could represent Thorin's character and his arc with just a single card. So I think we'll have Thorin as the leader of the company, Thorin as king under the mountain, and probably Thorin with dragon sickness. And I expect at least that last one to involve some kind of treasure mechanic. I would be really surprised if treasure wasn't a major mechanic in this set. And then Gandalf, I expect Gandalf to have maybe a couple of different cards. He's not in the whole story. Remember, he drops out before they go into Mirkwood. So unless they're going to incorporate in some of the Necromancer stuff, which they could do, then I don't expect Gandalf to have maybe as many cards, but I expect him to have a couple. He already has a lot of cards from the Lord of the Rings. And then I expect us to get some really cool new legendaries. I expect there to be a Smog card. So in the Lord of the Rings set, we only got a Smog token, which makes sense because it was generated off of a saga, but now we'll get at least one, but probably multiple real Smog cards. Smog also has a lot of names, so there's kind of a lot to work with there to give him some different vibes. Of course, I expect his main color to be red because that tends to be the color of dragons, but we could definitely see some blue mixed in there as well, or some black mixed in there as well. And then another really exciting legendary that we are absolutely certain to get is Beorn, and I expect this to be a double-sided card, so I expect to be able to flip between man and beast. And going off of the modal cards that came out in Spider-Man, I would expect it to be similar to that, where you could cast it for either side, but maybe it will be more like Werewolves, where there is a mechanical cost for being able to transform it. Okay, so legendaries, I'm sure I'll have more to talk about that as we get closer. We're about a year out from this set being released, so we've got plenty of time to really theorize on what this might be before we start to see cards coming out. Next, I want to talk about artifacts. I think artifacts are going to be really important in this set because they are really important in the story of The Hobbit. So I would expect that we get every artifact that we see basically gets to be put into here. So there will probably be some generic weapons, but we'll also get the named weapons. Sting and Glamdring already have cards from the Lord of the Rings set, but I expect them to get new cards here. And then Orcust will get an Orcust card, which we've never had before. And that should be really cool. I imagine it will have some kind of goblin mechanic on it. Now, I would, of course, expect to see the ring make a reappearance. I don't think it will make a reappearance in the same form that it did. I think it will be more focused on its Hobbit mechanics, like what it is in The Hobbit. And remember, it's a very different artifact in The Hobbit. And so we will probably see it do something like giving Shroud to a character, rather than this overpowered artifact that we had in The Lord of the Rings, which was totally appropriate in that setting. I do not expect us to see the ring tempts you mechanic come back in this. It just doesn't make as much sense here in The Hobbit, and so I don't think that will come back. It was a nice mechanic that they developed for The Lord of the Rings, but I don't see a reason for it to reappear here. Now, a couple of ones that are a little bit further out, but I would love to see, one would be the Troll Purse as a piece of equipment. Now, of course, this didn't make it in the movies because it's kind of a wacky moment from the books, but the Troll Purse actually talks in the Troll encounter, and I would love to see that incorporated in some way. I think it would be really cool if it was a kind of an equipment that dealt damage out when that creature received damage or was contacted in some way. That would be a really cool mechanic to see there. I would also really like to see a contract card, and this I think will probably happen because we had like the letter card in the Lord of the Rings. So a contract card, which would be some kind of treasure granting thing, right? Because Bilbo gets this contract that he has to sign, and he keeps that contract with him the whole time. He's got these terms of the contract. So I would love to see that contract come in as an artifact. I think that would be a great one. Then, of course, I think the Mithril coat is a cinch to come back. Probably not in its original form from the Lord of the Rings, probably as a different name and a new card, but that needs to come back. It's an obvious equipment that can easily be put there. And then one that would be really fun to see would be Pocket Handkerchief, because the Pocket Handkerchief is the thing that Bilbo leaves behind. So I think it would be great if there was some kind of Pocket Handkerchief where it has the mechanic of like maybe it tutors out a land or something and it keeps going back into the library, right? So it's always getting lost. That would just be a lot of fun. Okay, so we've talked about legendaries, we've talked about artifacts. I'm not going to go through every card type right now. I'm sure I'll get a chance to do a little bit more about this in the future. But right now I want to talk about commander decks. Now, there were no commander decks for Spider-Man, so I'm not super hopeful that there will be commander decks for The Hobbit, but it would be great if there were. If there were, I think that the commander deck should be Battle of Five Armies themed, because I think that makes the most sense. And it would be great if there were 5, but the number 5 is put in there, but it's never like really delineated in the book which of the armies are the 5 armies. So it might be a little hard to make 5 commander decks work, but I think for sure 4 could work. I think you would have Thorin as commander with a dwarf deck, and then I think you would have Bard as commander of a human deck. I think you would have the Elven King, which they may or may not use the name Thranduil. It's not in the Hobbit book, so I don't know if they'll use it or if they'll just call him Elven King, but you could have him with an elf deck, so that gets you 3. And then for your 4th one, you would have an evil deck. So you could have Bolg as commander leading goblins and wargs. And that would mirror what we got with commander decks in the Lord of the Rings, where we got an elf deck, a human deck, a hobbit deck, and an evil deck. So here we would just get dwarves instead of hobbits. And I think that would work really well. I think there's also potential that you could do a 5th commander deck where you had Gandalf as commander as kind of an intervention or a Eucatastrophe deck. So you get Eagles, you get Beorn coming in, that kind of thing. There could be potential there, but 5 commander decks is what they release on the biggest sets, so I don't really expect that in this case. Now, speaking of a dwarf deck, we've never had that before because there just aren't that many dwarves in the Lord of the Rings, but now we will finally get some serious dwarf stuff, and I expect to see Dwarf Typal be a really strong mechanic in this deck. And I expect that to happen whether or not we get commander decks, but I do hope that we get some commanders because I think that'd be super fun. And it gives a lot of opportunity to bring in some other cards where you could theme the artwork around the Hobbit, but you don't necessarily need to come up with new cards for it. Okay, that's it for today. I'm, of course, very excited about this. I would love to hear what you think down in the comments. Let me know, are you excited about this? What kinds of cards do you want to see come out of this? And I will try and make more content around this as we are approaching it, and of course as different things are leaked and released about it. Until next time, farewell wherever you fare. May your ears receive you at your journey's end.